Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Hospitality TV. I am your host, Rafael Peterson. If this is your first time tuning in, thank you so much for joining. This is a show that was created for the hospitality industry. The goal here is to interview some of the best in the industry. We're going to extract their best practices so that we can all learn from them, hopefully apply them to our own lives so that our lives can be better, and consequently the people around us can also achieve their own goals. If this show provides you any type of value whatsoever, or if you know someone who you think this might be valuable for, please share the show. It's the only way that we grow the show. We get bigger and better guests, and it has more potential to be more helpful to others. Now, for today's guest, the current wine director and general manager for the Marine Room, Mr. Nicholas George. How you doing, sir?
Raphael, this is such a pleasure to be here with you today, and I'm very proud of all you have done to put this project together.
Thank you so much. That means a lot, man. I'm so glad that we're finally doing this too. We've known each other. I was thinking about it the other night. We go back to, I think, 2011, if I'm not mistaken. 14 years. That's crazy. We met at my first job here in San Diego, which was at Addison, which was then part of the Grand Del Mar. Now it's the Fairmont Del Mar. But you've had a huge influence in the way I've grown as a professional. I don't know if I've ever told you this personally, but just the crew that we've had there, or the crew that we had at Addison collectively, was such an amazing crew. We can speak to that here in a second. But you were absolutely one of the people that was the most influential there. I feel like you were one of the more mature people. And I'm not saying older, I'm just saying you had a more mature presence about you, which kind of helped us kind of stay in our game and be focused on what we were doing. And I just got to say, you know, whether we've actually said it directly or not, you've always been a huge influence in the way that I've wanted to be in this industry. So thank you for everything that you've done. And dude, it's such a pleasure to be here literally 14 years later, full circle, and we're just doing our thing, and we get to sit down and share some time together. So thank you.
Well, those are very kind words. I look to you as a collaborator, as a brother, of course, to relationships that we build in this industry, especially at a restaurant like Addison. That was very, very special for me because of what we were able to accomplish. What I learned from those around me continue to grow. But as you know, it's about the relationships. And when you're on the floor every day and everyone is working towards the same goal and holding one another accountable with the guidance and support that we all have for one another, to me, that is the greatest gift. That's why we're so special. And of course, we spent so much time together in the restaurant with that crew, but also all the special moment, the life outside of the restaurant is what we were able to enjoy together.
Yeah. And you've had quite a career as well. You know, obviously you've gone through so many places in your career. And so I'm hoping to be able to touch on several of those today. And I think I'm going to go backwards, actually, if that's okay. And we can jump all around. It doesn't really matter. But, you know, we met at Addison. From there, you jumped over to PerSe, TKRG in New York. You were, you had a bigger position with Urban Plates as well. And then ultimately here in San Diego, current wine director for the Marine Room. So, you know, one of the most insightful things for me, at least, is I love going into different parts of people's careers and seeing, you know, what is the best practice or practices that they've taken with them from that place, from that time in their career, and maybe how they've applied it in the next place that they've been, right? It's kind of how this podcast came to be. Is, you know, I moving away from Addison, I went to go be a general manager and a wine buyer for a very small neighborhood wine bar. And knew absolutely nothing about a business aspect of running a team or anything. So, you know, if I could go back to that first week and grab myself by the neck and sit myself down, I'd have so many pieces of advice on what to do and what not to do, right? I think there's a lot of lessons for people, especially coming from somebody such as yourself. But I want to jump straight, if it's okay, to the PerSe time of your life, because you moved away from Addison. You had, you know, you had a ton of experience under your belt. What was it like going back to New York and working for the Thomas Keller Restaurant Group?
I felt like it was a natural progression from a professional point of view. Of course, being in the environment at Addison, which collectively that restaurant received every award imaginable at the time. Michelin was not visiting San Diego, so that was, of course, the goal. There was a reason why I did a stage at PerSe and at the French Laundry while working at Addison, because, of course, we need to learn from those around us and to see how we were measuring up. And it was amazing. I was just so proud of what we were doing collectively at Addison, even though from a guest point of view, we may not have been recognized or received as well. We saw those nights where we were not as busy as we wanted to be, and we saw that growth as business and how many guests we were able to really take care of. But moving on to PerSe, of course, Chef Keller, he's one of the leaders in this industry for a reason, and there's such a legacy that he has. It just seemed like it was a natural fit. So I did a stage at 11 Madison Park, did a stage at PerSe, as I spoke of, and it just seemed to be a fit. But I wanted to be able to challenge myself to be in any field. You want to be able to put yourself in the best environment for growth, to see how you were able to stand up to the pressure and the success and being a part of a team. It was a very humbling experience at time. It was very challenging at times, but every day when I put on the suit and I would get on that escalator going up in the Time Warner building, I was so excited. And to be in service, look around the room or look in the kitchen to see how many talented team members there were that you could pull subtleties from, to learn from every day. That was probably really the gift.
There's something there I want to kind of break apart. First, when you came back from your stage at PerSe and you were still working at Addison, what was your initial impression? I remember we had a conversation about it too. It was a long time ago, but comparatively to how we were executing at the time being at Addison.
I do remember after the stage at PerSe and after the stage at French Laundry, we actually had a meeting on a Saturday afternoon with the team, and Chet Radley wanted me to just share my experience. I was fired up. I was just so proud of what we were already doing at the time, and because I felt like, hey, we're holding our own. We are, from a standard point of view, we are executing.
We're at that level.
We're at that level, but we were so hungry at Addison. I always felt like we were the underdog. I love that feeling of being the underdog, feeling like we had something to prove every night, and to look around the room and see Jesse and Will and the other team members like coming together, pushing one another, challenging. It was amazing, but I was really just fired up. Like, yeah, let's do this. We are holding our own. What can we learn from? What are the subtleties? And then, of course, when Chef Keller came to visit multiple times, it was wonderful to have him in the restaurant, come see what we were doing.
Yeah.
And of course, that was due to the relationship he had with Jesse Rodriguez and the relationship you built with Chef Bradley.
Yeah, so you had to travel at that point, right? There's nobody who was doing anything like what we were doing at that time being in San Diego, right? We have some couple of some restaurants here in San Diego, so you maybe can go over there and dabble and see what it's like. But for us, you either had to go to San Francisco, which we made that group trip to the French Laundry, which was amazing, to go see how they operated compared to what we were doing. You had to go and get out of town and see what people were doing. So that's got to be a great feeling to kind of get that affirmation of, like, you know what, we absolutely belong here, and we're at the same level, at this competitive level of the best, of the highest focus in industry. Yeah, that was a hell of a time. When you actually went to work there, there was only a couple of years, and you actually left from Addison to go there, right? From your timeline?
I was working as a wine and service director for a restaurant group in Los Angeles for about a year, and then I went back to New York, turned to New York.
And I guess what I'm getting at with that is that it wasn't like it was 10 years later or 15 years later where some things in culture, and certainly the culture of restaurants, may have shifted. What I'm getting at is this. I remember the culture, and we can talk so much about this. We can talk for hours about this, but the culture of the time being of Addison was very harsh. Maybe it was ruthless. It was very unforgiving. But it forced everybody there to be at the top of your game, or you are going to get booted out. And you know what? A lot of times it wasn't necessarily the most enjoyable experience. It was
Enjoyable on all levels. No.
very high stress. Uh, but I look back and I always say, but I would do that again for sure. It made me such a better professional, and it put us by default into just much. It made us aware of a higher level of execution that's out there. But I guess what I'm getting at with all that is we're very aware of the culture, and I'd love to kind of hear what you thought about that culture at the time being. But I'm curious: was that the same type of culture going to PerSe? Because they have a very unique philosophy around hospitality, right? And I think that they've had a lot of greats. Obviously, I mean, obviously founded by Thomas Taylor, but you know they've had some of the most famous people surrounding in the hospitality industry go through there. And Bobby Septu was someone at Saint Andre, if I'm not mistaken. So he's arguably one of the most notable sommeliers, certainly in the hospitality industry. Now we have a lot of other characters that are, you know, the author of Unreasonable Hospitality and people like this that are coming even more famous now just from strictly their work in hospitality. But Bobby Stuckey, with his immense focus on hospitality and what it meant to that group, and then going to PerSe. And I'm just curious, what was the culture like there? Was it similar? Was it different? Was there a noticeable difference in the culture around hospitality in the restaurant?
Our transition from Addison to PerSe, it was very, very similar. Listen, I still miss that every day. I still think of it. You have a friend who says he will never leave that environment, that 3-star Michelin environment. The pursuit of excellence and perfection, whether it's sports or business, everyone is striving to be the best. Everyone is always going to take a different approach. It's like guiding and supporting our team members. I cannot speak to every team member the same way when I'm trying to get results. There needs to be firm tone. There needs to be humor. There needs to be a personal connection there. But it was ruthless at PerSe. The only way, because when people ask who have not worked in that environment, what is it like? You can envision driving a race car around a track. But until you are in it every minute of every day, no one understands the pace that you are at every day. And you learn and grow together, and you are trained by different people. So whether it is a food runner who's been at a cooking school for 2 years, or they were trained this way, so they're going to in turn treat you a certain way, it may not be the most professional, but that is the environment. That is the environment that I grew up in many restaurants. And that's part of what I've done in my past. You know, I have been firm. I've always been trying to be fair with everyone. But yeah, there were times I joke around. You'd have 2 minutes to brush your teeth. You'd have brush your teeth after a family meal in the hallway to get ready for service.
Right.
It was a culture that was challenging. I thrived in. You take what you can from it. I think me being in the industry for longer, I knew how to not be so affected by it. But what you need to be really aware of is how it affects the mental state. And I think this is from a professional, if you're professional sports or in business, you can't let the mind get in the way of what your body's going to do, because you have to trust your experience. You have to trust yourself on the floor. You know what you can do. And, of course, Antonio Begonia, who was the general manager at the time, he would break the ice. He would say in the middle of service sometimes, like, hey, we're just serving food and wine. Like, yes, it is important. guests are going to pay hundreds of dollars. They waited weeks to months to make a reservation. There's always this expectation right now. And that's why it's so important to personally connect with the guest, to get the hug at the end of the day, to say, hey, can we take a photograph of you after you did the kitchen tour and the wine cellar tour, and you're giving you the high five at 1 o'clock, 1:30 in the morning. That's where you're able to connect, because you have to connect tableside, because there's already so many expectations that can blind the experience from a guest point of view. I think that's what we all want to do in this industry. You want to connect on an emotional level.
It's so funny you say it's only food and wine, because I remember a moment when I was running some food, I was running some music, and I was running a couple of bougiers into the dining room in Addison, and I went around the corner and I almost dropped one of the bougiers out of the little container that it was in. And one of our coworkers, he saw me, but he saw the reaction on my face. But I literally almost had a heart attack, because the thought of, sure, it's only food, but if I have to go back to chef, not for another bougier, because I dropped it. And he looks at me and was like, dude, you realize you almost had a heart attack? You're frank, you almost dropped that bougier. He goes, it's just food, but it's not just food. I mean, there's an expectation of perfection on a nightly basis that,
You speak of bringing out a gougere, and you think about how many courses a guest is going to receive. It doesn't comfort you when you make a mistake, but I brought the wrong course to the wrong table during my training process. And then everyone around you is like, oh, well, I did this on this table. I did this a year ago. I did this. It is so humbling. And the practice is just go home during that moment in service, because the concern is you're going to get so mentally, you're going to get into your head that you're not going to be able to perform after you've made the mistake. And then you just learn from it. I could still see the table. I know who I was running with, and I let them take the lead, which I shared them during the training process. Yeah, we're all going to make mistakes every day. No one is perfect. Of course, as we know, how do you recover from mistakes? Or how do you let the guest not be aware that there was a mistake at all?
Right.
It's not always about perfection, serving right, left, during this way. It's about the emotional connection. But yes, we've all been there, Ralph, where we have served the wrong food or grabbed the wrong bottle of wine or worked at the wrong table. Those mistakes are going to happen every day. It's what do you do at the end of service? How do you think about it? How do you change the situation? What post shifts do you have with that group of team members? When do you sit in the office at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning to discuss what happened? How do you support that team member the best to make sure that they're not going home, as we all do, taking it home with them? And sometimes you have to, as you know, like, hey, just go home. We're going to discuss this tomorrow. Right. Or sometimes you just want to have that feeling of closure before the end of service so you could start tomorrow feeling fresh.
Yeah.
But that's where the intimacy occurs between team members. So we try to guide one another. Oh, yeah. How many mistakes have we made in our career that we can go back to?
Yeah. There's so much value in how either your team members, as you said, they started sharing other times that they themselves had made mistakes. So it would, in essence, maybe comfort a little bit. And then how maybe that's a manager or a leader might handle that also, right? I think there's a lot of opportunities for people. I think there's the reaction to berate somebody. They're, what the hell is wrong with you? Why did you do that? And I think that ultimately, and I know it's easier said than done, that player, as long as they were able to recognize the mistake and be better from it, is now a more valuable player for your team, right? And if I remember hearing that in another podcast, actually, that I like a lot, he was talking about a story where one of his people on his team on some sales deal had, basically, in long story short, had made like a $10,000, because it didn't cost him $10,000. So it was a mistake of him. They're very good. They were a good employee. They made a mistake and they missed it. And the guy was like, you know what? Instead of firing that person, why would I do that? Like I looked at it as that case $10,000 just trusting somewhere in the right fate. And now hopefully they're not going to do it again. So that was valuable to me now, whereas if I bring in somebody else new now they might have to learn that same possible mistake as well. So I think that's a greater coach on what you were saying on how you deal with that and how the team helps you deal with it. It's going to happen at some point, right?
It is. You've already made the emotional connection. You've already made the time and the energy investment into the training process, understanding that we are all human beings and we are going to make mistakes, but you're striving for these standards every day. That is there a clear understanding of what those standards are? Do you have your tools? Do you know the method? Do you know the support team around you that can have your back? Yes, someone's going to get yelled at. Cooking school, never had it happen with me. When I was cooking school, pans blowing, flying through the kitchen. There's always a different approach. So you think about how those leaders were taught, how they grew up in this industry. Are they going to in turn change the behavior, or are they in turn going to repeat the behavior?
Right.
But as we know, that happens in personal relationships and professional. And this is where you have to evolve. But my time at PerSe, I just love being there. I love that time.
Let me ask you this. So your role started off as a maitre d', if I'm not mistaken. And, that's something that you don't see in a lot of places. Maybe it's still more popular in New York. I mean, I don't know if there's, maybe Addison might be the only place here in San Diego that has a restaurant that has an actual maitre d' in it. Before I worked at Addison, I worked at 2-star Michelin in San Francisco at Aqua on California Street. And we had a maitre d' there, Jean-Claude PerSe. I hope I get to meet him again one day. I could still around in San Francisco, but he was the classic French maitre d'. And I mean, he was good. Like, he knew everybody's name. He knew what they liked to drink. He knew a little bit about them. So he would ask when somebody came in, he's like, oh, and how was so-and-so? How are they doing? And he would follow for people on certain things that he had noticed. I mean, he was the original gangster when it came to making desk notes. And it was all mental. I mean, he's not going to the computer. He was just that type of guy, right? But he was so elegant, and just his presence on the floor was so comforting in a essentially very chaotic scenario sometimes. I mean, it was busy back then. And there was just a lot of people on the floor. And I just remember always looking at him and like, man, that's a very special type of person who does that job. And it was amazing. I learned a lot from him, whether directly or just, through osmosis. But I wonder, how was the role of maitre d' presented to you in PerSe? Like, how were you coming into that role, and how were you trained for that?
So that image that you have just created of the maitre d', that's what I grew up with in mind. And there were the gentlemen, just you sharing that story. I thought of an instructor I had at the Culinary Institute of America, Phil Popino, that I had a great connection with. And then there was another instructor, Heinz Holtman, who was more of the European style. They fit that image. Mm-hmm. I think that image of a maitre d' doesn't really exist anymore. I think that was much more classic and for a time period. Mm-hmm. The maitre d' team at PerSe, at the time, there were 4 or 5 of us. We all had our role. And of course, when you're doing 10 services a week, we had breakfast, lunch. We had lunch and dinner service Friday, Saturday, and Sunday at PerSe. You have dinner service the rest of the week. This is where you need someone to lead the role. So all the relationships were important for us. And of course, you make those connections. And when you see repeat guests, even at a restaurant like that, living in New York City, we would see guests. We would join us sometimes once a week, sometimes once a month, once every couple months. For many of our guests, it was a once in a lifetime experience, right? Once a year experience. So it's always important to build relationships. Of course, the guest name, knowing what they like and their story. And then, of course, gathering that information so we're better prepared for the next time they join us. Mm-hmm. Whether they like our root beer or white burgundy, right? The training process at PerSe, you would go through the training process of every role. So even though I was going to be a maitre d', I did a little bit of culinary training, more observing, but then you start in every role. So you're a food runner for a period of time. You're going to follow the wine team. You're going to follow the captain. This goes on like 12 weeks. And then you still have that support. How do you complete that training process? You still have that support of everyone around you. The learning never ends. And one of my colleagues said, for him, he didn't really begin to even feel comfortable until he hit the year mark. And when you think about it, well, I just went through 3 months of training. Now I'm in the introductory phase of my development. But knowing that you're under the microscope every minute of the day, people checking in, but knowing that you also had that support. So, as I said earlier, it was humbling and challenging and exhilarating.
So would you say then that it was a very completely different picture than the old Symmetry I could just describe it? What was the objective more than in that role?
Knowing that there can't be one person who is going to be that face of the restaurant when you're taking care of this many guests for a week, over 10 services, and the complexity of the team, you need the layers. And so having a team of different maitre d's, we would all have our own responsibilities, say behind the scenes at an administrative level, but we all were able to be our own person, have our own personality. They wanted your personality to shine through.
So it sounds like what you're saying, and then the role of what would be the current day maitre d' at PerSe was a little bit different than what the old school picture of a maitre d' was, with the one that I kind of just described, the ones that I work with at Aqua. But still, I'm sure there's a lot of the same techniques that go into it. You were mentioning some managerial objectives that go into the job of the maitre d', but I'm also sure that to do that position, you have to have an incredibly high capacity for emotional intelligence, for being able to stay cool, calm, and collecting these environments. I mean, you're literally kind of like the person that is coming in and can act as emotional glue for the team if they're getting a little bit too stressed out or something, or the evening span going south. You're the one that has to be able to step in and bring everybody together. And not to mention, you have to go take care of the guests, and that might not always be. And everybody's having a great time and everybody's happy. I'm sure there's scenarios where you have to be able to come in and kind of win the guests back. And how do you train for that? How do you hire for that? How do you know somebody's capable of doing that role and then talking to them?
So for me, how did I train for that? We just learned through years of experience by learning from those around us, by making our mistakes, and knowing that we've done this before. And at the end of the day, whether you're in a 3-star Michelin environment or you're a neighborhood gastropub, we're taking care of people, and everything happens everywhere. Just because we're human beings. When you're on the floor, of course, as we know, we want to stay calm and project that level-headed quality, and knowing that if we stay calm, even when there's a storm inside our head or behind the scenes, that will help project that feeling. We never want the guests to feel that. We know if our team members begin to feel that, that energy can begin to permeate throughout the diner. That's what you need to be aware of, right? Even if it's a 5-second or 30-second conversation in the corner, it's a break from the huddle and you have to get back out to the floor. So from a training point of view, especially at PerSe, we always had a team around us. We always had support. And with everyone having different experience, that's what enriched us. From a training point of view, I just know there were plenty of moments where I can go back in my career and say, I've seen something like this in this restaurant at this time, and to pull from that. How do you gain experience? You just need to be in the game. As we know, if you're not in the game, you are not learning anything. And this is why it's so important to me. I feel like it doesn't matter where you are, it's what you're doing. You could be in a small mom and pop restaurant, but if you have your hands in a little bit of everything, you're going to be learning more. I saw kids in school at the culinary. They might have been at a 5-star hotel. They're peeling carrots all day long. Not to say that they can't learn things. They can learn by cleanliness and organization and efficiency and detail. And from the maitre d' role, of course, you want to be able to be a calm leader to the team, knowing that they come trust you personally and professionally, and to be able to be there if a mistake is there, but also learn from them. That was the beauty. Every day we get to learn from those around us and be inspired by those around us. And at that level, that's where it was, that quiet inspiration by when you're in service, really are just managing service. And you're a part of service. You are running food, you're clearing tables, you're opening a bottle of wine, you're refilling, you're being that support because now you're engaged. It's one thing to stand back and observe what you need to do. You need to get the broader picture, but you need to be engaged on every step because now you're connected and you could feel what's actually happening. The tempo of service. That's why we know office time is for office, service time is for the service.
So I have another question for you surrounding this. I mean, you've obviously, just like you were saying, you've learned so much from being surrounded by this team that's always very supportive, and they on their own end, they have a ton of experience in what they do, and they're operating at this super high level, literally the highest level that you can think of, where the expectations are as high as they can be, and it's a very stressful environment. I think what a lot of people are excited to bring on players such as yourself to have all this experience into their team or into a place like this where we're at the Marine Room. Look at the resume, like, oh man, he's worked for the Addison, PerSe, he's worked for the Thomas Teller Restaurant Group. How do you bring what you've learned at these other places that have different expectations? They have a different culture. The employees have a different culture. They on their own end have different expectations. How do you bring that into a new place that might not be a 3 Michelin star restaurant, doesn't have that expectation, but obviously you still want to bring some of the positive attributes that you've acquired along the way, but you want to come in and you want to come to it without seeming overwhelming, or you're not going to bring in this all of a sudden this 3-star expectation necessarily into service when that's not what the service is. I mean, you know what I mean? Like people always look at you like, well, this guy knows what he's doing. I want to bring him in. How do you bring that philosophy into the current day culture? And you could feel free to be specific to where you are now in your career. How are you adding in those elements that you've acquired along the way into what you're doing now?
You have to be able to adapt. And one, we're part of Foy Beach Tennis Club, so it is just a marina. We need to do our part from a financial point of view, run a disciplined restaurant, from a human point of view, take care of the guest. To me, there's a long tradition here, and there's such an emotional connection. We hear it all the time from guests who've been here 10, 20, 30 years ago, their parents, their family. We at the marina, we're a special occasion restaurant. Ozals, anniversaries, birthdays, and many of our guests, a high percentage of our guests are joining us from outside San Diego. They're joining us for this special occasion. But my thought is always, we have to respect and appreciate all the moments that came for us and all the time and the energy from the team members that have worked in this restaurant to take care of those guests. We're in a period of transition. The whole club is undergoing this transition financially. Seems to be a direction that we're all following. And I can't come in trying to execute the same standards from PerSe here, just like you can't do that from any other restaurant. It's what you pick and choose. Mm-hmm. And what are we going to do here? Well, let's start with the team. Do they have the tools that they need to actually go into service? Do they feel supported? Do they feel like they're trusted? Do they trust me? Because if not, then they're going to shut down, or they're going to, no one wants to feel like that they can't fulfill their role because of things that they're missing.
You said there for a second, you have to pick and choose. Could you name 1, 2, or 3 things?
So from a wine service point of view, I think it's very important, whether it's a $15 Malbec or First Breath Bordeaux, right? You want to be enjoying that in glassware that is beautiful and clean and ready to go. You want to have that presentation of a wine being decanted. You want to have that artist standing tableside on how to pour. I had a situation the other day where a server, it was screw cap. They opened the bottle, but I just quietly showed them. I said, hey, this would be a little more elegant way of doing this. When you're decanting, of course, I remember Will and Jeffy sharing this with us at Addison, keeping your elbows close to you, and it's all in the wrist. You don't need to move your body a certain way just to decant a bottle of wine. Those are those subtleties that we take with us. At the end of the day, serving right-handed, left-handed, of course, we all know the guidelines that we want to do to take care of the guests, but it's the subtleties that we can help elevate. But the team has to be themselves and then let their personality shine through, understanding that these are the standards we're trying to execute every day. And is it frustrating at times? Of course it is. But this is why it all starts with the people. Are we selecting the right people to be part of our team? Are we clear with the message that we're trying to do every day? And then what can we do ongoing from an educational point of view? And for us, we have wine tastings. We do different high tide dinners and wine pairings for special occasions. But we're very fortunate here at the Marine Room. We have pre-shift, which is an element of service that is definitely going out of style because restaurants can't afford to have.
They pre-short it. They have all these staggered in times where people come in at different times just to save a little bit on neighbor here, a little bit on neighbor there, but then you can't really have a nice cohesive team meeting.
No. And so we're very fortunate wherever the team comes in at the entire same time, they all enjoy their family meal together. They come back. We have pre-shift. And we try to make that fun and informative and educational. There's always a structure to it. You know, we begin with the quote of the day. Culinary shares any thoughts on food items. Our bartenders will go through something new, something that came in, something that's 86. And of course, we go through the notes at special occasions for the evening. Something that we're doing right now is the team has a responsibility. We're all students of the industry. Even if you are pursuing another craft, the team members are assigned to pair an industry story. So they get up in front of everyone else at pre-shift and they might share something that's personal to them. They might share about a martini article. They might share one of our servers, John, just came back from Napa Valley. So he was sharing about his trip. So that's the responsibility of how are we going to continue to grow together? How are we going to grow in this industry? We have a whole world in your back pocket or Google any topic you like. So we're all students of the industry, but being able to find something that's personal to you, yes, get up in front of the tee for 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes, public speaking in front of the group and share something that you are excited about or passionate, why this restaurant caught your attention, why this recipe, why you growing up in the industry was important to you. That's what I really love that we do right now. And besides being a destination for so many guests who are celebrating, coming from all around the world, we're not in San Diego, just not a San Diego baked restaurant. You know that from data. And just knowing that guest chose us, we always have to be so humbled that at some point, 10, 20, 30 years down the road, they're going to tell their kids or their grandkids, like, you know what? Your mom and I went out to this restaurant. We were right along the water. It was amazing. We watched the sunset. Maybe they're telling you about the server. And I proposed to her that night, or we got engaged, or we had our wedding there. And that's the beauty of coming together in this industry and a restaurant. No matter what price you're paying, there should be that emotional, sentimental quality. Apron restaurants have that. That's what we strive to have.
Right. I know there's no doubt about that. I lived several different places in California, and by far, I mean, I tell people all the time, I mean, tell me one spot that has a more impactful view or feeling that you're literally bread of the water. I don't think it exists. I want to jump back to free shifts real quick because I know that's something that you're really big on, and it's such an important tool for the team. Is that a time to discuss what went wrong in the service?
Oh, of course. It gives us the opportunity to, I always think of the sports metaphor, right? If you're playing football on Sunday you have to watch the tape. You have to go back to the tape. What did you do well? What can you learn from? What mistakes were made? You're going to watch the tape as you prepare to play the next team. If we do not look together as a team and discuss this openly, what went wrong, then as you know, someone else is going to make that mistake.
Right.
And in my past life, in environments that you and I both worked in, someone would got called out in front of the entire team. That's not our method. Now we keep it general in a theme, but it comes back to one of our values here at La Jolla Beach Tennis Club: trust and accountability. So I need to be accountable to the team to recognize this was a moment, to share it with them that we can learn from, and then hopefully everyone is staying engaged and not feel like, well, I'm not a server, so that happened to me. 6 months from now, 9 months from now, a year from now, they could be in a different role. But yeah, pre-ship is a very, very important type.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's such an amazing practice. It's such an amazing tool. And I think that's what the teams that do it very well are typically teams that perform a lot better.
Period. And I still look at how it can be improved. You know, we follow the rhythm. I think, should we type it all out so the team members can actually read what we're reviewing at the same time, rather than, well, someone is just speaking. You have different speakers. Everyone is involved. It's a collaborative effort. But I still think like, okay, we went over that 2 weeks ago. This person missed it. Why did they miss it? Was it the messaging? How could it be improved? We've repeated it 5 days that week rather than just the one day.
Yeah.
And there are those things like that we cover all week long.
Right. I want to ask you, I guess, for a moment of vulnerability, what is something that you think you could be doing better right now?
Reach it out to those around me. When I think about
Employees or friends?
both, when I think about, we're a freestanding restaurant, but we are a part of La Jolla Beach Tennis Club. So of course there's other departments that we work with. What bothers me the most, and I share this with the team, is when we make a mistake that affects another department, because it's now their time and energy. If it's just something that for us, we'll resolve it. But I feel like at this point, I definitely can improve upon reaching out to those around me, whether they're in accounting or in catering, different department. What do you need from us? What are we doing that you would like to see us do differently? What are we doing that we're doing well to just stay on track? Because we're a strong team here. Those are some powerful questions. And I want us to be the leaders of the La Jolla Beach Tennis Club. But personally, I think about that when I'm in the office, because we get into our routine or we have our weekly meetings. Yeah, and reaching out, of course. This is a great platform that you have, Raphael, because you are actively seeking out others in this industry, listening to them, ask questions. And the gift of listening, for anyone that is even listening to this podcast, is truly a gift, to just sit back and listen. So you're creating your network constantly. I definitely have an opportunity to do that. Of course, we are at wine tastings. We have our relationships with the sales representatives, or we're in a food show. But yes, I definitely reach out more, personally and professionally.
Yeah, I mean, it's literally one of the main reasons why I do this is to have this time to talk, because I think you and I actually have great conversations when the times that we do.
I love seeing you. You're always like, oh, here's Raphael, and there's always the big smile and the hug, and then of course we know we're going to sit down and taste some things.
Yeah, we'll talk about other things like half an hour and then find break and some wine towards the end. But it's weird because I feel like I don't have that with a lot of people either, and which is just kind of the name of the game. I think you link up with friends or somebody that you know, and it's kind of a lot of small talk and things like that. But I think that it's I don't know. I don't know if there's a lot of opportunities to just get together and maybe dig into kind of these deeper topics around the work that we're doing, and I feel like maybe for a lot of people, it might seem heavy as I don't want to talk about that. And it's my day off. I want to go have a beer and relax and talk about something else. But I don't know. I really enjoy this time. I think that there's a lot of substance behind it. And I think that's it ultimately. It's very interesting to me. And again, I wish that I had taken a lot of this information, years ago.
We
While
all
starting off.
right. We all look back.
Yeah.
I will share this just with that thought. And this was before I was at PerSe. They began to reach out to other restaurateurs and chefs and people in the industry. Because it wasn't about a competition. Daniel Blue's going to have his guests, right? Yes, they're going to Bernardin, might be joining you one day, maybe the next day.
Yeah.
But one thing that they did, which I really loved, was there was a schedule of simply sitting down and having coffee together in a restaurant just to discuss certain things. And it wasn't everybody, but it would be the leaders of these restaurants sitting down with maybe the general manager at 11 Addison Park was there, and someone from the Union Square Hospitality Group, just discuss it and staying connected, because that's cool. At the end, you're all in this industry together. Anything that can help benefit you is going to benefit somebody else. Perhaps it's the guest, but that's one thing I really like that they did there, which I don't really see.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really cool. All right, I want to shift gears a little bit with you. Couple of things, and I want to blind taste some wine with you, and then we have to wrap up because I've already taken up way too much of your time. Let's see. In your current role right now as a general manager, I'm sure you interview the people that come here looking for a job, right? Which aren't many, because the people that you have here don't want to leave, which is a great sign of a restaurant's culture, I think. If you have a lot of turnover, there's a reason for that. If you have a bunch of people who want to stay here, there's also a reason for that. And I think that's something you should be very proud of. But let's say that somebody's coming into the door and they want to interview here for a captain position. Give them some advice on what's the best way for them to show up to that interview. What are some things that they should be asking?
I think no matter what role you're interviewing for, you need to dress for the role that you're interviewing for, first and foremost. We live in Southern California. It's a laid back, much more relaxed environment. It's not that often you see someone dress up. So that first part, come in, look at the part. If you look the part, most likely you're going to add the part. You're going to feel better about yourself. Number two, as in any interview, you should do your research. You should understand who we are, who the players are. And it's not about myself, but what's happening at La Jolla Beach Tennis Club? What is the history of the Marine Route? What style of cuisine are we serving? Have you looked at the wine list that is available online? And then really, why do you want to be here? We're not looking for someone who is seasonal. We do know, and the beauty of this industry is it brings people in from all around the world, from different walks of life, different levels of education. If you're studying to be a lawyer, an accountant, you need to stop along the way. But fortunately for us here at the Marina, we have team members who this is their chosen career. They take pride in that. But you need to understand who we are and why you want to be here. And at the end of the day, I always feel like it's our responsibility if you were to be part of the team. Ideally, you need to be a better professional when you do leave. If we have not prepared you 2, 3, 4, 5 years and you go to some other restaurant, it's not a good reflection on that person for us. What have we taught you? But hopefully you learn something on a human level that even if you're in a completely different field, you say, I remember I worked at this restaurant and they emphasized cleanliness, or they emphasized organization, or I remember staying calm, because that is going to affect someone's life. Those are the things I look for. Are you open to learning? Are you engaged every day? Because you could have years of experience, but there's a level of complacency where if you feel like I've already earned my spot here on the team, know that we all, including myself, I have to earn it every day. We have to continue to prove ourselves. And I feel very proud of what we've done here. But by no means are we at the level where I would like us to be here. The Mariner bit is still part of that process. And that's what keeps us going every day.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Is there anything that we can touch on that you would like to talk about?
I would say this for people who are in the industry. Early on in my career, I was impatient until I was doing an externship at Hotel Bel Air. And Chef Dean Faring said, I want somebody to stay at least a year. I can see where people want to go from one world to the next, feel like they're going to learn. Take your time, because it does take time to unfold, right? You have to be patient. But at the same time, and Raphael, I'm going back to you, right? Look what you've done. General manager, wine director, you're in this field right now. You're lighting, you're the director, you're the producer, we joked, you're the interviewer, all right? But you're in this field, and that's what I learned at cooking school. You don't have to be just in fine dining. You can work industry, military, hospitals, bistros, coffee shops. The depth of this industry that it had to offer is amazing. But it doesn't define who you are. You are not just the title. The beauty is there's so many other layers that can be built within who you are. You can take pride in being a part of a restaurant. If you're a server, if you're a bartender, if you're a food runner, but that doesn't define who you are. That took me a longer period of time to fully grasp. Patience, and it doesn't define who you are. It's just one part of who you are. It's continue to cultivate anything and everything that makes you happy. We do tend to find people that are creative in this field, and that beauty, cultivating that creativity. But yeah, I would say be patient, especially early on in your career, and don't let it define you. There's so many other layers.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. That's such a great point. But I think there's a lot of humility in that as well, of like the realization that this is just a title. It's not who you are. And it also kind of goes both ways too, that I think once you recognize if you're in a bigger position or if you're in a faster position, that might not necessarily, the things that come along with that aren't necessarily for you, the individual, Nicholas George. It's for the position, it's for the role, not the person. So yeah, there was a really cool like analogy that Simon Sinek used once. I love that guy. I listened to a lot of his podcast. He's also got incredible insights, hospitality. But he was like giving an example of, he's going to a conference as like the main speaker, or like in a really big position. I think he was at the head of a company at one point when he was doing it. I might be pushing the story a little bit, but essentially I think he had a very big position in his company at the time, and he was going to a conference to speak. So in that position, they had a fancy limo waiting for him. They had an assistant waiting for the type of coffee that he liked, and they had the snacks that he enjoyed, and all these little micro touches that were for him going to speak this conference. And a couple of years later, he went back and he was no longer was that company, didn't have that at all.
Yeah.
Was going to go speak there. He didn't have any of those things. Had to catch his own Uber, had to get his own coffee. He was like, I made me realize that was never for me. That was for the role.
That was for the title.
And I think it's a very interesting thing, because I will be 100% transparent. I think in some of the early parts of my career too, especially when I became a new wine director or a new sommelier, and like one of the first roles when I had that, if you for that position, for the thought of it, let it go to your head, and you think that you're this kind of big, important person, and you are. And a lot of those, I'm not saying that the achievements of getting there or the accomplishments that the things that you've done along the way to get to that point, I'm not neglecting any of that. I mean, it takes a lot of effort for people to get to these positions, but I think also sometimes it's easy for it to get to your head. And I think that some of the players that are very emotionally savvy in this industry can still get there and still be very humble and still be very much a human person, and can still very much separate themselves from the position or the role.
Yep.
I think those are some of the best people in the industry to learn from.
It really is. And I think that's why diversifying your career is so important. So you gain perspective, you gain greater perspective. I went from 3-star Michelin to urban plates. It completely changed. But I knew the industry was evolving. I knew there was something that I could learn as well as contribute to a growing concept. That's why you have to diversify, really continue to change your perspective. And as we know, I leave here tomorrow, the volume's going to go up. They're going to serve dinner next week. Because it's not about us. It's about what we can do while we're here. Hopefully we leave an impact, a positive impact on the guest, on the role, and the team. There's something else.
Nico, I'm going to buy case on some wine.
All right.
Just wait here 1 second, please.
We're tasting red.
So the goal here, we were doing 60-second tastings. It's a little aggressive. I'm going to get up to 90 seconds. But the reason that we're timing it is so that we can keep it quick, concise, and to the point. Sorry, let me get back in here. So
we're tasting like we're
don't cut to us yet.
the dinner table.
So you can do it however you want to. So the goal here is I'm going to give you 90 seconds. We were doing 60 seconds, but that's a little aggressive and it goes by very quick. I still want to keep it somewhat timed so that we keep you focused and on track, and pretty much you give us the things that really matter about this wine. We don't need to go through the grid. If you want to go through the grid, you can go through it. Do you still remember the grid, Phil?
I still have the grid memorized, and it was such an amazing part of our career. And what we developed at Addison, the inventory, the partnership, tasting the grid, making your notes, having your notes to look back on why you were getting a wine or why you were missing a wine. But I'm going to take your advice and just taste, because I haven't done the grid in at least a year. Just going to take your advice and taste it like we're tasting together. Cut like when you come in excited about a producer and a wine.
All right, Nico, you're on the clock. As soon as you touch the glass, you're on the clock. Good luck, sir.
Great. Thank you, sir. Anyone would like to go through a humbling experience, do a blind taping in front of others? That'd be
in front of 2 video cameras on a podcast. And listen, it's okay. Again, I think the most important thing here is just for people to hear the process of how you go through a wine. Here, let me start up again real quick. Hey Siri, start a timer for 90 seconds.
90 seconds, starting down.
All right, you're live.
Raphael, this is a beautiful wine. So I have a red wine. It is clear, bright color. We have a ruby center moving out to an orangey rim. To me, that is indicative of age or grape variety. I would say it's medium in alcohol. I can speed this along.
You're at 50 seconds already. We're 50 seconds left.
Move it out to the nose. Dried strawberry, dried cherry, fresh and dried sherry, subtle earthiness, wet clay, moderate oak. I believe wine number 1 that Raphael gave me is from the Old World possible grape varieties.
Did you even taste it?
I have not even tasted it.
Oh my gosh, you're just going, all right?
Goer.
Jesus. Timer's up, but we'll give you another 30 seconds.
I believe this wine that Raphael gave me is red wine from the Old World, from Europe. Possible grape varieties, Pinot Noir, Sangiovese, Nebbiolo, with it. Ooh, beautiful. Age range of 5 to 8 years. I'm going to call this wine Lunella de Montalcino from the 2016, I would say 2014 vintage from Tuscany, Italy.
Final answer?
Final answer.
All right, I love it. Love it. Let me grab it for you. So
It's delicious. I want to take another sip of it.
Feel free to drink it, please.
I want to eat something with this. Yeah, I'm ready to diet.
Sir, you're in Italy.
Oh, Barbaresco.
You're just a little bit south, but you are very spot on call with age. It has a little age on it. That is a 2015 La Spinona Barbaresco.
Oof. Man, I called it 2014.
You hit 16, then you went to 14, but you were right there in basically 10 years of age.
That's delicious.
You called it Brunello e Montalcino, which is Sangiovese Grosso. It's a thicker strain of Sangiovese. Those two often get confused very frequently. They're very tough. They're both thin skins that drink a little bit heavier with elevated levels of tannin. Typically, the Barbaresco, what was once told to me is that Nebbiolo would have a lingering tannin finish, wherein Brunello Montalcino, aka Sangiovese Grosso, the thing that lingers between tannin and acidity is the acidity. I learned that at the Mark Poly group back in the day in Vegas. But of course, easier said than done. It's very easy to say that versus when you're actually tasting it, it's like, what is lingering here? And with the 2015, also, I will say, I think the tannins aren't very aggressive. They're very well integrated. Sometimes you get a younger Nebbiolo and it's very obvious, like, oh, this is a Barolo because the tannins are so hard.
I switched to vintage. I just thought, because we tasted the 16 and it's firmer and you're firmer on the palate. Yeah, definitely. Italy, delicious.
Great tasting, great breakdown. You were in Italy, you were in years, you were just in a slightly different region, but I mean, two very similar grape styles. So you took it to the right country, which right away is huge.
Yeah, thank God I wasn't going to Argentina.
Exactly, or Burgundy. Nico, it's an absolute pleasure. I'm so glad we got to do this. We'll have to do it again soon because we're kind of, for various reasons, we're running short on time here today. But thank you, man. Thank you so much for everything that you do. I don't say this lightly, and you know, I've been talking to a lot of people recently, and you think I might just throw this around, but you are truly one of the OGs in San Diego hospitality industry. You're not on Instagram or Facebook or anything, so people can't really see what you're doing. Or if you actually have an account, you're never on there. But I would say, you know, if you can, swing by the Marine Room, come get a glass of wine at the bar, introduce yourself to Nico, talk to him a little bit. I'm sure he'd be glad to meet some other people from the San Diego or from out of town, some more people in the hospitality industry. And yeah, maybe we can start something like what you were saying with the OGs at PerSe were doing, was getting together on a weekly, monthly, quarterly, whatever it is, to get together and just kind of change some ideas and help everybody grow. So that's the purpose of it. So Nico, thank you so much for your time, brother.
Raphael, thank you for having me. I know that there have been many other individuals across from you that have more talent and experience. So to just be asked to be and share with you is a pleasure. And as I've said, you should be very proud of yourself from what you do to help cultivate the industry, but also to pursue the passion that you have for photography and to just dig deeper and get to know the human side. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.